pressure. Boris Johnson to use G7 summit to push Biden for keep troops in Afghanistan. Boris Johnson is set to put pressure on US President Joe Biden to extend the deadline for pulling out of Afghanistan. The Prime Minister has said he will use Tuesday's G7 virtual summit, which the UK is hosting, to urge his US counterpart to keep troops in the war-torn country beyond his September 11 deadline. It is hoped that doing this would allow more foreign nationals and asylum seekers to leave the country before the fanatical militants take complete control. The main obstacles Mr. Johnson faces are Mr. Biden's reluctance to extend the deadline, and getting the Taliban to agree. But some claim that with numerous people dying in chaotic scenes outside Kabul airport in recent days, the Taliban may welcome an extension. Taking to Twitter, Mr. Johnson wrote, "I will convene G7 leaders on Tuesday for urgent talks on the situation in Afghanistan. It is vital that the international community works together to ensure safe evacuations, prevent a humanitarian crisis and support the Afghan people to secure gains of the last 20 years. Lord Richards of Herstmonceux, the former Chief of Defence Staff, told that extending the evacuation window would undoubtedly save lives if the Taliban agreed to it. He added, "Western politicians are sleepwalking through this at the moment, coming out with all sorts of statements of regret and recrimination. It's so important that we now get a grip of it. For me, this is a classic potential UN multilateral humanitarian intervention operation, and it needs to be thought through and implemented quickly, not something, by the way, the UN are renowned for sadly. But on this one, I think there could be an international consensus, and the Taliban ironically might well welcome it, because the alternative is some very bad headlines come September 1 when we see starving Afghans, and worse potentially, simply because they don't have the capacity to deal with it. So there's the makings of an immediate first stage of a Western strategy here, which everyone might welcome, but we need to get on with it." Sir Nick Kay, the former British ambassador to Afghanistan, agreed with this assessment. He told Radio, "What I want to see is a strong push to have that deadline extended. If you can extend the deadline, you can release the Afghan people from the panic that they're in, that this is all going to end within a matter of days and hours." However, some military commanders fear that American and British soldiers could become targets for suicide bombers if they linger any longer than absolutely necessary. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab and Defense Minister Ben Wallace have also been pressing their US counterparts to extend the deadline. The war in Afghanistan was a conflict that lasted from 2001 to 2021 following the United States invasion of Afghanistan, when the United States and its allies drove the Taliban from power in order to deny al-Qaeda a safe base of operations in Afghanistan. It was the longest war in United States history, surpassing the Vietnam War by roughly 5 months. After the initial objectives were completed, a coalition of over 40 countries, including all NATO members, formed a security mission in the country called International Security Assistance Force, ISAF, succeeded by the Resolute Support Mission, RS, in 2014, of which certain members were involved in military combat allied with Afghanistan's government. The war mostly consisted of Taliban insurgencies 68, fighting against the Afghan armed forces and allied forces. The majority of ISAF/RS soldiers and personnel were American. The war was codenamed by the US as Operation Enduring Freedom, 2001 to 2014, and Operation Freedom's Sentinel, 2015 to 2021. Following the September 11 attacks in 2001, George W. Bush demanded that the Taliban, then de facto ruling Afghanistan, hand over Osama bin Laden. The Taliban's refusal to extradite him led to Operation Enduring Freedom. The Taliban and their al-Qaeda allies were mostly defeated in the country by US-led forces, and the Northern Alliance, which had been fighting the Taliban since 1996. Fighting the Taliban